think we're ready to get started here pretty soon. Our first order of business this evening is our prayer led by Commissioner Huffine and our pledge led by Commissioner Ford.
Let us bow our heads. Dear Lord, as we gather here this evening, Lord, let us always be thankful for all the blessings you provide in our country, in our state, and in this county. Lord, give us the wisdom to make the decisions for this county, to take advantage of the opportunities that are before us that will be the best for all the citizens of the county, dear Lord. Just lead, guide, and direct us in everything we do every day, Lord. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Let's honor America. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, if you'll take us to the roll call screen, please. Go ahead and indicate your presence at this 4 p.m. meeting. Susan, do we have a backup battery?
Yes, we have.
I think I'm.
I'll trade you.
Let's see. It may be a more issue than a battery. There we go. There's the battery. Thank you, Susan. Okay, we have 13 present, 2 absent. We do have a quorum. Our next item is approval of the agenda. We have a motion, Commissioner Jones. Motion made by Commissioner Jones, second by Commissioner Williams to approve the agenda. We do need to add public comment to this agenda. It was left off the agenda, and we do have someone that has signed up to speak. We have a motion to amend that motion by Commissioner Davenport, second by Commissioner Fitzgerald. Any discussion on the amendment of the motion? Question's been called. All in favor of amending the motion to include public comment signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Now we go back to the original motion to approve the agenda with adding public comment. The motion amended. Question's been called. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. No. The motion passes. All right, we'll go right directly into public comment at this time. We do have one speaker that's signed up for a public comment this evening. When you come forward for public comment, you'll have 3 minutes to address the commission. If you'll give your name and address to the clerk when you come forward to the podium, and be sure and talk into the microphone. Victoria Camp, if you'll come forward, Ms. Camp, to the podium.
Oh, what a surprise. Thank you. 3 minutes. Okay. I understand that you're going to be speaking about how to spend this money. So I also understand that there's a little bit of wiggle room. So I'm hoping that you would consider giving a small portion of that money to the shelter and our wiggly friends who need a home. I learned yesterday or 2 days ago that all of the shelters in this region are full. So we at Washington County this week are going to be getting 17 more dogs, which means that we are then full. It's a no-kill facility. I don't know where they go from there, but if you could consider giving them maybe 50 or 100,000, that would go a long way, because it's my understanding that the shelter itself has to raise money. How do you do that with a garage sale? It's not working. So if you would consider that, we'd appreciate it. The second thing is, we all these days are concerned about global warming. We know that in our cars, when our engines are running, we are creating carbon dioxide and other bad things, and we are all caught sitting at the stoplights. You might sit there for a minute or so with no cross traffic, and your car is running, creating all of these bad fumes. Well, what about the idea of using artificial intelligence to start timing these lights so that we don't have to sit there so long? And a friend of mine said, you know those cameras that they have sitting there to take photos of the people who are breaking the law? Well, those cameras could also pay attention to the traffic. And if there's no cross traffic, they can change like that. Now, I don't know exactly how you do it with artificial intelligence, but I'm sure it can be done. And just imagine if this community started something like that could catch on and be used across the country. Thank you for listening. Okay?
Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming and giving your comments. There is a committee that considers these items as well, and they'll be meeting coming up soon. And if you'd like to get with the mayor, he can direct you to when that committee will be meeting. Or Sherry has the committee schedule as well. She can tell you when they meet again. Yes, ma'am. All right, our next item is the only item for this evening is discussion and possible action concerning the priorities to be addressed in regards to the funding available through the American Rescue Plan Act. One of the things I'll advise us before we get started, the commission, the agenda for this particular meeting did not come out to about 3 hours ago. That is not fall within the commission rules. So if we do take action, we may need to consider suspending the rules to consider any action. However, the notice of the meeting is good, and it's met all notice requirements. It's just the agenda that did not come out in sufficient time. So with that being said, if we do make a motion, I know a lot of this meeting was for discussion and setting priorities. So with that being said, I'll open the floor up for discussion of that item. Commissioner Wheeler?
Sat in or being on the committee and sitting through the meeting. I think the first thing I wanted to mention was that the committee seems to welcome the idea that the commission would weigh in now and not after they go about at least a framework. aside money in each district. That was important to that committee member because it felt like that way you didn't focus all of it in one area of the county, but you spread it out throughout. She specifically in her answer talked about one of the Ruritans that had done so much in the area. But, and again, there, if you, if you just to throw out figures, if you did 20,000 for a nonprofit in each district, that's 300,000. If you did, took $1 million and divided it among 15 districts, that's 66,000, 7,000. So, my point is it adds up in her. So I think what we're talking about doing today makes a lot of sense. I wanted to kind of throw that out because I do think it won't take long. If we start dividing this into categories, we'll have it. It'll be gone. And that's nothing wrong with that. Water is the other one, the big one that we've all talked about. And if we did half of it for that, then we're approaching it already here. If we talk in those terms.
Commissioner Huffine, I'm going to find your button here. Sorry, they've got you on the other side of the board.
That's all right. Thank you. Well, I think, as you stated, from a priority perspective, I think all the hard work done by our water task force has put us in the position we're in to take full advantage. So I think that should be the top priority, is committing a sizable amount of money to that. And secondarily to that, I think we should consider broadband expansion where needed. Just in preparation, if we have another pandemic, to have the school system in the very best position possible to be able to facilitate at-home learning during a period of time that may be required. So I think that from my perspective, those are two really top priorities for us to look at and make sure that we're allocating as much money as possible to expedite and execute expansion. I don't think we'll get totally, but I think we can make a major stride forward. And again, thanks to the Water Task Force for all the hard work of putting us in that great position.
Commissioner Williams?
Do I remember from Jason Mumpower's presentation that this was not to be divided into salaries, or can it be used for salaries?
It's my understanding you can't put this in salaries. You could, however, do a bonus.
Which
Now, that's
you all-
just my understanding.
I guess my only hesitation is I can't remember. Some things they were saying they are encouraging or discouraging. Other things would be a violation of rules, and I don't know which that would be. I'm sure they would discourage that because it's recurring, but I don't know whether it was against the rules or not. At this point.
Mayor, did you have anything you wanted to add on that one? I mean, I don't.
Well, I think that's the answer, is that they're discouraging reoccurring expenses, hiring staff, and that sort of thing. With the exception of the temporary, one of the that was made clear early is that if we needed to have an administrative program, there's a lot of paperwork that goes along with federal programs. And so sorting through to be sure that project qualifies first, and then the quarterly reporting, we do allow hiring of staff and management, with the understanding that, it's at maximum probably a 6-year.
And that would be someone to manage that grant as you went, right?
We have our first reporting in August, so it's on us, we have to do it, it's a lot of paperwork, I've seen some of the initial components of it, and we really don't have anybody that's probably going to be doing that. I have spoken with the director of the First Tennessee Development District with the thought process that the same person that might do hours could potentially do it for other counties, so we could share the expense. We're looking into that. I haven't have that back to that answer yet. I mean, it's really going to take somebody who's very detail oriented,
Commissioner Malone?
Just a few big picture comments, and some response, I guess, to Commissioner Wheeler, but I had imagined, and I think our state comptroller had said or had suggested that we look at big, once in a lifetime kind of generational investment. And it is, designed, I mean, this is one-time money, so we don't wanna set something up where we have reoccurring expenses and then boom, our money runs out and then what do we do? We already know we have that budget challenges meeting our regular ongoing expenses that increase with inflation. But I just think we need to look at big investments that are kind of one-time opportunities. And I think they should align, when this commission first came together now 3 years ago, basically, we did have a workshop and we set some key priorities, water being one of them. But we set really 3 kind of key priorities. And I think with the opportunity presented by these monies, we really ought to make those investments as much as possible along those key objectives. Because I think as a commission, we have an opportunity that some other commissions haven't had in terms of having set those priorities and then really, I think we've already had a meaningful impact in a number of key areas, the jungle school, the water project. But I think we can have a very significant impact on our strategic priorities. And that's what this money affords us. And then, I am concerned because I know one of the things that Power stressed is the follow-up, and I think I've heard Commissioner Jones speak to this, and that's where it concerns me about us potentially making smaller donations or investments, because there is a significant amount of follow-up and paperwork that happens. It's not just you give $50,000 to the animal shelter. No, there has to be follow-up, and I'm not saying that's not a worthy project. It may very well be, but it's not just that you make that investment and then move on. No, you make that investment and there has to be follow-up reporting about how those dollars were used and the impact that they had. And so obviously, the more those dollars get broken down into smaller increments, your paperwork and reporting responsibilities grow exponentially. And so I think we have to keep that paperwork and the follow-up reporting in mind as we look at those things. But I am imagining us doing somewhere around half the money for water projects, at least setting it aside. So you're somewhere around $12 million for that. And then we've already heard from the mayor about 4.4 or $4.5 million for these HVAC projects. And so you're up to 17. And then the other items Commissioner Wheeler mentioned, I mean, if it's 17 plus 6, you're already at 23 million potentially. The 6 being the other items, the meat processing facility, the livestock auction house, those kind of things. So just some general thoughts, but I think as much as possible, we ought to keep the investments big, generational, and in line with our strategic priorities. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Jones?
My questions have to do with the process by which the committee communicates with our group so that we have some sense of what's being considered. And the last thing I would want would be for the committee to put a whole lot of work into a decision or a plan, and then it's not in tune or in line with what you would be interested in. So allow that two-way communication to happen. And how does that happen? And does the committee work through one of our committees to get the items onto our agenda or some other process? And then the other piece is just, this money will go a lot further if there are opportunities to share the projects with other people who have money. So we've already heard that the state may be willing to match the water projects. And if state's willing to pay for half of that 12 million, then we wouldn't have to spend 12 million. I mean, there's a lot of ways to make that one up, but we may be able to partner with the city on projects, we may be able to partner with schools on projects. And an example with the schools would be workforce development, which fits within our 3 primary objectives. So how are we communicating with other potential entities that have been granted ARP funds so that we know what they have and what they're thinking, and then we can kind of look at opportunities that could help us? I agree, kind of look at those once in a lifetime investments. There's also, rumors about other entities being funded, such as healthcare, through this source. And I haven't gotten to the bottom of who else has truly received funding in our community outside of schools, municipalities, and county governments. So there could be needs in our community that are significant, where we're making assumptions that there's funds flowing in and there aren't, or I'm not sure. But I was wondering how the committee was seeking community input and learning about what the community's interests are outside of, who the committee members are. So boil it down to 3 things. One is, how is the committee learning what the community is interested in? Appreciate having someone come. And actually, several of you are here tonight, but we really, I think, want to show and actually incorporate community input. And then number 2, how's the community interfacing with us so that we're all working together? And then lastly, how is this decision-making process articulating with all of the other government and other groups that are receiving money so that we can maybe go further if possible? I don't know if we have the answers to those questions tonight, but we should be seeking them.
Commissioner Wheeler?
But I think the committee's not gotten that far because this commission made it clear they wanted to have, and I support the idea, the commission having input on what the commission's priorities were. I think that dictates to a certain degree, not to a large degree, because of the limited funds, really, where they go. So, no, that is not, other than just generally talking about throwing out some ideas, that's really all we've done, until the commission speaks to them.
So just, can I respond to that?
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner.
So do you feel like, obviously, we need to talk about priorities tonight, but I still think, even once we know, like, these are our top 5 sort of interest areas, we still are gonna need a process by which we communicate around project ideas.
That's true. I think the commission will be telling the committee though what that process is gonna be.
If we can, yeah, if we can figure it out.
The other thing, like you mentioned public input, but if the commission sets a framework that pretty well takes up the 24 million, and if the commission, and I wholly support the idea that we say we want to, that we ask the committee to focus on big, once in a lifetime investment. And that makes a big difference on, you don't, I don't think, that there's a form that's been put together to potentially go out to organizations to apply. But I think it's fundamentally unfair to send those things out when we haven't decided whether we can make those types of small grants. And, we're gonna get, and not to mention the phone calls that we're all gonna get if we do that. We need to decide that tonight, but if we, or going forward, but before the committee sends anything off, but if we're not gonna do those small type grants, then there's no reason to have, to seek, what people are interested in if we've already said these are the priorities of the commission and they're gonna total 24 million. Unless we need input within those categories.
Commissioner Williams?
when we had the $3 million deficit that was rearranged successfully so that the schools still were not defunded to that degree. Chad Fleener, who's here, said that the Washington County School Board hired a grant writer and how successful that had been. And Ken Huffine is going to look into it, and Chad's here. Can you confirm how successful that one salary has been to the school system?
Yeah, I can't, I'll be honest, I think it's 640,000 is what they brought in last year. And it was from new programs. And the bad thing about the grants is it doesn't fund, things that are already in place. This is actually new programs and stuff like that. When we opened the grant writer up 2 years ago, it was because, they said the rule of thumb was at least 3 times their salary is what they need to bring in. I think she brought in 7 the first year. But she's done an incredible job, so it's money well spent.
Commissioner Huffine?
Yeah, and actually, Chad, thank you for stimulating that idea with your email. Appreciate that very much. And I did follow up with Director Boyd and Brad both. From about total benefits, salary benefits, everything, roughly $80,000 to $90,000 a year ballpark, and with about $1 million in grants generated. So that actually have something drawn up to be taken to CIA committee at our next meeting to bring forward. Obviously, it'll flow through budget and so forth. But from the mayor's comment, this may tie in well. Maybe we can have someone that's doing grant writing and handling the administrative piece of this both. So it may be perfect timing to do that and we're able to fund that position administratively for the next 6 years. That really gives us a really great track record, whether that's viable moving forward. So thank you very much for bringing that up. I think great comments here. A couple things I heard that and just from a time perspective, I think we need to, or hopefully can accomplish this evening, is defining the priorities, at least assigning either a hard dollar amount or a percentage amount, and then what is that process moving forward. I don't know what the plan is for the committee to meet, what kind of frequency, if y'all will discuss that. And I think our frequency is already set at once a month. So if we can get feedback on a monthly basis at our commission meeting, that's probably the most appropriate and falls within already our framework. But I'll pass that over.
I need to defer to the mayor on that. We haven't talked about it. Conference room.
Mayor, did you want to comment?
Mr. Chairman, at this point, haven't actually created a schedule. Only had 2 meetings. The first one was just sort of, hey, here we are, here's some parameters, we're thinking about some stuff. Came together again last week, but actually some ideas. So that's was the hope, is that they would, these folks would venture out and talk to their friends in the community and generate some ideas of things we hadn't talked about. I think so far it's been really productive. So we can be on a schedule, but at this point have not created one.
Mayor, one thing this week, I got to speak to Mr. Newbern at the Office of Budget Management this week there at the state. And me and him talked a lot about approving projects and what it took to make sure the projects were approved and blessed by the state and the comptroller and had an opportunity for them to look at. But they didn't seem to me to be in a very big hurry with this. I mean, they said they might have an approval process ready for the fall. I kind of felt like that there was no need for us to be in too big of a hurry because they really haven't got their process worked out yet. So I don't know if you had the same feeling from that or not, but I mean, it was probably good we're moving the direction we're moving, but I didn't get the feel that they said they hadn't spent any of their money yet either. So they were kind of slow walking it until they had a process worked out.
I think it's a great comment, and clearly, the federal government, this is a law that they enacted, and now they're writing the rules. So they came out initially with general parameters. So there's 5 main categories that the federal government has indicated are areas where they would approve spending. Most of them are pretty gray. The one that is relatively clear is water, sewer, broadband infrastructure, where they say that pretty much make necessary investments to improve access to clean drinking water, invest in wastewater and stormwater infrastructure, and provide unserved or underserved locations with new or expanded broadband. So I think the work that the water task force has done will, definitely produce some opportunities here. Beyond that, these other categories are vague. I just read you a little bit of Cliff Notes. As you know, it's 151 pages today. I've gone through it twice, and honestly, when you read through it, it's just as great when you finish as it was when you start. So we are waiting for the government, the federal government, to issue rules that are not interim final rules, but potentially final rules, at least the first cut of them. And we anticipate to see those in September. So from the comptroller's office, they are definitely taking a wait-and-see approach, even on national funds. But the good news is that Washington County is well ahead of the curve in determining water projects. This commission, in your thoughtfulness and foresightedness, have already approved the first round of projects, and the water task force is hard at work beginning to deal with the city of Kingsport and Johnson Signal projects beyond the scope of Jennifer. So a lot of stuff is going on. I think that we are in preparation for what's to come, and what we will begin to understand from the comptroller's office, who really is the management group of this. The state has engaged the same group that was responsible for approving projects last year, the smaller tranche of money for the coronavirus relief funds. They'll be busy. They were busy last year and somewhat helpful and effective. At the end of the day, if we're wrong about a project, county will be responsible for paying it back. So I think the goal in moving forward on this is the state will be very cautious, be sure that we're making good moves moving forward. So I think that's good advice, and I think that's what we're hearing from them. We expect to get some clarification within the next 30 to 45 days as to what project that is. But I don't think that needs to put the brakes on the formulation of ideas and potential opportunities that we can put in the bucket to verify, once we do have a clear understanding of the rules.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. I know a couple of the highlights that I brought up when I talked with him, and it was a little, I don't know, in that gray area that you talked about was, he said some counties would be approved for a project and other counties would be denied that project. It could even be the same project. How did, I'm still waiting a little bit on how, I guess it was how you were economically impacted, I guess is what, or your ability to recover. I was a little bit confused on that part of it. But I guess he, like I said, they were still working through that process, and he wanted to, one of the things he spoke to me about was doing a total project, and I asked him about setting them, individual projects, and he definitely said, no, I think they learned better from the last time. He said, no, we want to look at your projects as wholes, not that'll be interesting to see if that does come to fruition, but they're still working through their process. So it was just pieces and parts, and I was like you, I read a lot through that, and, it was pretty tough. Commissioner Wheeler?
Was that, when they initially were talking about the state approval, it was only if you sent them your money and they took care of your money and they were gonna guarantee the approval of the project. So we're not sending them our money now and they're not guaranteeing the project. Are they requiring state approval for the project? Or do we have some benefit that may help us other than they're just?
So far, the comptroller has said that they'll be the first folks in to audit the projects. So they will be looking at it, and we'll be watching over it, although, Commissioner Will, I think you're exactly right. These are federal funds, first half of which has already been wire transferred in the county's account. So we can spend the money starting tomorrow. Right. Now, again, if we're wrong about how we spend it, we're audited, then, we are subject to having to, as a county, having to pay that back. With regard to a comment that the chairman made, I think this may or may not be what he was talking about. So, there's a category that is called replace public sector revenue loss. And so what that envisions is using funds to provide government service and extend the reduction from reduced financial gain during the pandemic. So there's a formula in the 151 pages that plugs in certain economic numbers that can be benchmarked against prior year's growth. And the county could apply for funds to be put into the county government revenue based on change in growth or loss of revenue. It's complicated, you can't, reading through it, you can't take certain lines. For example, if you look at our court system, revenue stream from last year, courts closed for the most part a significant amount of time. So naturally, fines, fees, and other court costs that show up in our county revenues were non-existent that period of time. Well, it wouldn't be hard to show loss there over prior years. But can't do that, it's gotta be countywide, and so we don't really know where we stand. CTAS is putting together a program, and they're working with that formula, with this information, as they understand it, to help counties assess, whether or not they qualify for funds that way. And so from that perspective, one county may qualify while another county doesn't. Otherwise, it appears to me that the rules generally are the same for everyone with respect to how you can spend these monies. That clear as muddy water? Well, guess what? That's the way the document reads as well. I'm glad I was able to, although I did read in there where 911 could get all the funding like the chief offered. So other than that.
I tell you, I did miss that part of the 151 pages. But I would like to know if, I would like there to be a process that we could have projects pre-approved at the state before this commission had to make a decision on whether we're going to approve those or not and add those back. I mean, I wouldn't want coming back and asking for $1 million project back from us. If that's who's going to be the ones doing it, the comptroller's office. Commissioner Wheeler?
But we do want to clarify though with them about whether we have to have everything in at one time, because we need to move forward on water projects, and that ought to be one the state can approve pretty quick without having to wait on all this other. And that's the one that we need the most time to get it all spent too.
And I think that's where they were. They were just in the process of developing their process where it came in, in the fact that they didn't really have this submission process down to where they wanted it to be. So the last he said to me was that they anticipated having it ready in the fall. And I think, I think the limitations on some of this money, of course, the state is under the same limitations that we are. There's no separate rules for states or county, they're living under the same rules that we are. And I think they would like to spend some of that money on maybe some different things that's outlined in those projects. So I think they're gonna be working hard on that, like the mayor said, opening up maybe some more of that gray area, to see what is approved and what's not. Commissioner Ford?
As we stated in the first workshop, we went to and discussed about priority things we want to see during our term. Then, and since then, the biggest thing I've seen, everybody's been behind is the water. Task force has done their job, and the board has done their job. And I agree with the mayor, I don't think we need to be in a hurry, we need to proceed cautious, need to proceed doing it the right way. We don't have to spend no money, we can keep it a while, we don't have to murder fingers. But I think the biggest, majority of the people in here today would agree that water is something that we gotta do, it right away with, that's my priority, my district, I tell you that right now. And, I don't know, it's like Steve, I thought we was gonna talk about it today and not have it happen. Maybe I'm on the plan, somebody else.
Commissioner Jones?
I agree that we've all been around a few times about the water projects and supportive of that. It's one of our objectives. The task force has been in action for a long time. And I would agree that we don't take action at this meeting for all the reasons, but maybe the water task force could, I don't know how it does this, put together some kind of resolution to us that would, and I personally would support, spending up to half our funding or 40% of our funding or something like that, our ARP funding on water projects, and just like execute that and maybe in our next commission meeting, so it can be established. We don't have to continue talking about it. It puts the guardrails on that portion of the funding. I do wonder if the state will come back and provide match, and if that happens, then I think there ought to be some language in there about allowing us to revisit spending some of the saved funding on other projects. We ought to have a B strain of projects lined up that we can do if we get help from the state on funding some of what we can do with water, if that makes sense. But some of what I'm interested in, I realize our guidance is muddy and we don't have great information right now about how to spend this. But that doesn't mean that, we don't have an obligation to do our best to communicate to constituents and make it as clear as possible what our process is going to be and what our thoughts are. And I think the sooner we can at least come out on the water projects with a pretty firm position on how much of the funds we want to spend on that, that starts setting those expectations. And then from there, we work with the committee to continue to, sort of locally set expectations going forward. And we could wait, it sounds like we could even wait a couple of years to make decisions about the last bit of funding. We have a couple of years, I think 2024. We don't have to rush, but the key is that we are in communication with everybody about how we're doing it. And one more question, is there a chair of the committee that's working on the funding? I don't know, Mayor Grady, are you the chair of that committee, or is there a chair?
Well, it's not a committee, it's a board, and so, yeah,
Okay.
Commissioner Davenport?
Yes, Yes, I think to answer or part of your question about the water projects and stuff, we've got roughly $8 million projects sitting there now that the municipalities have, they're moving forward on. I think Johnson City reported that they could be completed with their portion of projects by 2024. We've asked Kingsport and Johnson City to, the projects that they have, to build them all together as one project to move forward. So and then, of course, we've got our process with Jonesboro, meaning hiring a crew and doing that. We're still rolling there. So we've got $8 million pretty much on the table committed and looking at this. With that said, I've asked everybody on the task force to go back, and we need another round. We need 2 to 3 times more. Our goal, my goal, I guess I'll say Mike, because if I didn't ask the task force to agree with me, so I don't want to speak for them. But what I would like to see in a year is on our website, have every road listed in Washington County that have water in front of it. And have a tag out there that says we expect to have water at this time frame. Now, right now, I don't know how much money we're gonna get, so some of that may be 20 years. But you also have in that list of what's being completed. So someone could look, and they may get frustrated at where they're at on the list, and they could talk to their commissioner, not the task force, about where they're at on the list, and you would lobby and get them changed on the list for whatever it needs. Because again, this is a model. All models are wrong, some are useful. Hopefully this would be a useful model. So that's where we're at. So I feel really good at water. We're not gonna run out of projects, and we're not gonna run out of moving them forward. So that's where we're at, because we hope it would be nice if these funds get matched. And that means if we put 12 million, that could equal in 24 million. Well, now we're looking at that 20-year program maybe being 10. If we can get the projects done in the time frame, that's going to be our other. But we will have the projects there. They are moving now, so feel really good about where we're at there. So, Commissioner Fitzgerald or Mayor, anyone that was at Water Task Force, is that how our conversation went last week? Does that help?
So, just for clarification.
Yes, go ahead.
So, it sounds like, if we set aside a certain amount and the state matches it, we can double the number of projects we can do, even in the restricted time frame that we have.
We can put them on the list, getting the crew, the material, and everything to do it in the time frame that we're set. That may be a bigger hindrance than the money.
Because we gotta get it
Who
done
would
by
have thought that?
2026.
At
So
least right
the
now.
number should be set at what we can double and still do. And that way, we're not committing funds to water that we then end up not being able to spend, and which we had set towards something.
We talk about no projects, so we talk about it. We get where Jonesboro or Kingsport is a little behind. We're talking about getting a contract, that's how we'll be able to fund and have extra.
Great.
That's how you want to be projects. And, that's what we talk about, it's a list, and, like Brian, term thing, we want more of this, we want more projects, we want what we can get, so we can get more money. And, it's working.
That's great.
It's slow, the water stuff is slow going, it's not going to be no fast,
Great.
and, it's gonna take a while. It's slow work. I know everybody wants water, but they're gonna go to the big sector. They have to be patient. But, you gotta look at, it's the first time kind of get approached to something like this, that we all, hop in our night, and brainstorm it, work it out. And I was excited, everybody's excited about it. Everybody works hard to try to make it work. It really, it's like they see it. So like you fix something, nobody ever, even just walks away from it. It's not easy. Doing it, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, there was some discussion about timing, and I agree that there's no big rush, I would say, except and apart from the water piece. And I'm glad that we already have this first round, it's already moving, and I'm glad to hear that the Water Task Force is working on the next round. But from specific to the water, I think time is of the essence because of what Commissioner Davenport said. Piping, labor, and equipment. I know, I hear from some of my clients that they can't get heavy equipment. It's hard to get Caterpillar equipment or Bobcat equipment. And so I think the more we can be in the lead on those items, because again, Jason Mumpower encouraged 95 counties in the state of Tennessee to work on water and sewer projects. So Washington County is not alone. There is going to be competition for limited resources. So I do think from a timing perspective, it is important that we do go ahead and move forward expeditiously on the water piece. The only action item I imagine tonight, and I don't even know we have to do it tonight, but at some point very soon, we do need to give direction to this board. But from what I'm hearing, we got roughly 12 or 12.5 million that's going to be set aside for water, roughly 4.5 million for HVAC equipment in terms of for projects, both at the historic courthouse and at the Justice Center or the jail. But I think we do need to give some rough guidelines and parameters to this board so that they can make decisions, because we can't keep putting them off saying, well, there's no big hurry, because the 3 years is going to pass by faster than any of us will imagine. Thank you.
Commissioner Williams?
I just want to clarify for myself. I understand that the water lines will go out, but the individual property owners then have to pay for the tap in
And to run it to their house.
and to run it to their house. Now, for the disadvantaged person or citizen, will there be any way to help them if they can't afford this?
There's been no talk at this time.
I'll just say that according to the rules as we see them today, there doesn't appear to be any prohibition from doing that. So as far as the county is concerned, we can't go on private property and do anything. So we're gonna be in our own right of ways, setting water lines. But it could be potentially were to be improvable, once we, get clarification, and if the commission were to decide to, we could make a certain amount of funds available for what in grant jargon would be low to moderate income families. And we may want to consider a third-party clearinghouse to make that determination, maybe we could allow for Tennessee Development District or something like that. I don't think the county wants to be in a position of making a decision on, who would get that, made available to them or not. But, anyway, that's not off the table, it just hasn't been discussed because we're working on a big project right now.
Commissioner Williams?
A couple of things. One, we need, have to look at that as we're gonna run out of this real quick. So, we're looking again at big investments. But two, on the timing, the only, I would differ just a little bit on this. For instance, when we talked about this group that's working on this idea about the meat processing facility, they have a September or October deadline for applying for matching funds with the state. So there are, while we may even have to wait on actually pulling the trigger on setting money aside for the project, it would really be helpful to this committee if we would go ahead and make some decisions and get them made about where the areas that they can look at are. Because this group, they were wanting an answer just as quick as they could get it before they start putting together all applications for those grants for matching funds. But they can't do that unless they can say, Washington County, if we then decide later that's not gonna meet the federal guideline, then they withdraw the application for that matching grant. But we do need to let them know some things, or what we'll end up doing is just pushing that off another year. The problem with that is, we need to be ready for the B round, that absolutely is what needs to happen. So that if we get matching, if we've set aside $4 million for that project, and we get 2, then we're ready to go with 2 on the B. We put it off a full year because we weren't ready to apply for the matching grants. We're gonna have trouble meeting the 2024 deadline with some of that. And I would say one thing to the water, I think we ought to set the target where we wanna be, not where we currently think we can only get to. But I would set it, and then we'll worry about that in the B round. Because we need to challenge the water task force to keep looking, and they're doing a great job doing this already, but looking for ways to think outside the box and get more done, and they're working on that. But, I'd like to see us give them the full, if they think they can only get 8 million, including matching money done right now. One, we don't know we're gonna get the matching money for sure. And 2, we just need to keep challenging them to find ways to go get the other 4 and match it.
And I want this commission to know, the Water Task Force is committed to running out of time, running out of money before we run out of our project. Okay? We will not be held up because the task force did not have a project. Okay, now, we still got the engineering studies and all those things to do. And guess what? Everybody else is there too. But the process and the projects will be there.
But if we have till December of 2024 to get this stuff committed, by early part of 2024, we might have to start looking at, are we gonna run out of time?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So that we could bring the big, I don't like calling them that, we'll come up with
Sorry.
the second round of projects up, and get them going so that we got them, we have to get them committed by the end of 2024.
Yeah, yes.
But today, it's kind of hard to say, well, we can only do 8 million, not 12 million, right?
That's right. I'm hoping next month that, we will have lined up double what we have now. So another list, just what we have next month. Okay? And then we're going forward. Again, to have that list out there and that model setting out there where everybody sees every road in Washington County and where you're at on the list. And then that work's done, then we just work on, should that be repositioned on that list? Unless somebody's got a better idea of a way to do it, then I'm all ears. I'll gladly, take any suggestions or of how we get this organized to make sure we don't run out of projects.
By early 2024, we'll know how fast you can run to lay water on.
All right.
Jerome can do that. I don't think I can.
I want to ask you, this package plan that you're talking about, or slaughterhouse, is it gonna be funded with this money to an individual or individuals to build it and repair it and fix it up and places? What's the county involved with it for all that money? Well, whatever amount of money we set aside for that.
I haven't been involved in that at all, but what was explained to the committee was that it would be a cooperative of farmers that would run it. The county would actually own the facility, I guess lease it to that cooperative, and they would run it.
so the upkeep and all that kind of stuff, that big county, or
No, that would be the cooperative. The equipment, all that would not be the county involved in that. It's my understanding, but that's,
I think before we vote for something like that, we need really research it.
Yeah.
Really know what, for sure what we're getting into, but we may be opening up Pandora's box.
well, and the committee wasn't asking for approval of any project tonight, just general categories, so that's, sort of, that sort of falls under agriculture if we went that route.
We're not against it, I just want to make sure we look at it.
Commissioner Huffman?
So I think that what I hear, we're all committed to water. And I think and thank you very much, the 151 pages, once was enough to make it money for me. Thank you for going back to it the second time. But that's the one thing, we've got a real high confidence level that's going to fall within the parameters and that we can spend our money with. This is going to be a fluid situation because it is federal government. It's going to continue to change and evolve next couple of years, probably. So maybe we can move forward and use the water project as our learning curve. We've got a high confidence level we're going to have funding for that. Probably going to have matching funding. We're ready to move forward with it. So maybe whether we do tonight or it is next month, we go ahead and commit a certain amount of dollars to that so that we can start that whole project moving forward and glean the learnings from that we can apply to the other things as they come forward and as we develop those. And again, just, throw that out as a thought, an idea. Is that a way that we may want to start this whole process and be able to really get it moving pretty quickly?
I'm asking this as much a question as anything, but I don't think we're really talking about approving projects so much right now as setting, funding benchmarks, but not really, because again, we don't really want to do that until we know about the matching funds. With that said, when you all get to the point where we need dollars, as soon as we've got that in place, when you all need dollars for engineering or whatnot, then we have that come through, either through budget or through, if I don't know if your task force, y'all report to CIA, Public Works, so it comes through Public Works.
Yeah, I guess we are looking at, when we need money, I think we're looking at spring of 2022. The mayor said no. When we're talking about our projects with Johnson City and Kingsport, before we put a bucket in the ground, the engineering and stuff, that's how long it takes to get a bucket in the
But
ground.
you gotta pay for that engineering.
Okay, yeah, but your money's not in the engineering, it's in the contract, so we may need some money
Yeah,
there.
that's
Now, our other money that we will need, hire a crew, buy equipment and things like that with Jonesboro, that should happen, we're hoping that happens this fall. Okay, so that's as far as money timeline goes. But right now, if we allocated money tonight, it still would not speed up the process or slow down the process. So we're not waiting on money at this point. Okay, we're still moving along, and then once we get our approval and everything worked out with Jonesboro on our crew, that's when we're gonna need money. We're gonna need money to hire a crew, we're gonna need money to buy equipment.
But you're getting, just so you're aware, you're getting ready to have a request from Jonesboro probably in the next few weeks about engineering, if you want to move forward. Because they're already talking to their engineers about their project. My guess is Johnson City and see, they can't get it out until they've had it engineered. I don't know what kind of timeframe it is, but I know, when I was talking to the town administrator the other day, he was talking about being back with you all. He's wanting to set up a meeting in the next week, 10 days with the mayor, with the engineer, and then they want to get us a contract.
That's tomorrow.
All right. Commissioner Cage, I see
You
think
never
it's
got to
more.
speak yet at all.
Well, that's okay, go ahead.
I will go ahead and recognize you.
I was just gonna follow up on Commissioner Ford. What I was going, comment I wanted to make was concerning the slaughterhouse. The one thing that, you know, they may present a lot of, ideas on it and how it's gonna make money and everything. My question would be this: if it's such a moneymaker, why hasn't somebody in this county already done it themselves if it's that much of a, you know, profit in it? And that's something that we have to look at before we try and get in. I don't think myself we need to get in. County needs to be in any kind of meat processing or anything else.
Commissioner Jones?
I think that the agriculture project ideas are really great to just work through as examples. So we know that the committee hasn't had really the amount of discussion and preparation for bringing that issue to us yet, but, you know, personally, you know, just thinking through, well, what if they did due diligence on this project and came to us like next month or something? They had maybe some of the answers to your questions, Commissioner Cade, and some other things. Would we, say we heard that in the commission, would we all be ready to commit a bunch of funds to agriculture? I mean, there's certainly an argument to be made for, you know, the economic impact of agriculture as a whole, but do we all feel like meat packing or, you know, the space out of the fairgrounds or et cetera, do we feel like those are the things that have packed the biggest punch? Will they be able to make a case for that? And then the bigger question that I have is, what else did they consider? Did they look at healthcare? Did they look at what the schools are doing and the opportunity to collaborate on some workforce development projects? Did they look at, you know, the broader issues that we have in our county? And so what was the process by which we decided that agriculture projects, or even these ones, rise to the top? Those are the questions I would have.
Commissioner Davenport?
Yeah, I think part of our meeting tonight should be, do we want that committee to look at agriculture? Yes or no? And if that's something that this commission wants to look at, then it would go back to that group and they would put some ideas in order of, you know, here's some things that we think we can do. So you got water, is agriculture one, is education another? So I think that is what this commission should send to that group. So what areas do you want? I kind of looked at it and explained it, looked at it just in blocks. So you got water's block, then is agriculture something that we want to see a list of projects in, is education, is you know, health or whatever. Okay.
Commissioner Williams?
From talking and knowing Rebecca Alexander, Correct, who brought this project forward, it was really not so much of anything other than cost saving for the local cattle, people that raise cattle or sheep, and to save them the cost of getting their livestock out to where there are the slaughterhouses and stockyards. And I didn't equate it to being agriculture. Maybe I'm just dumb as to what.
It also has a lot to do with food supply. Food City is extremely interested in this project
Right.
because they got to where they were having to work hard to find meat to put in their stores. So part of it is to have your food supply more local, because you're not, right now, a lot of those cattle are being sent out west, slaughtered and brought back. And so the idea, so there's more to it than that. And I'm only saying this, I'm not ready to promote this project. I don't have any idea. But I'm just saying that, you know, I would suggest that we wait until it's actually presented to us, because I'm sure both Rebecca and the group that's talking about forming this cooperative would probably like a chance to talk to us before we decide on that. I like the idea of the blocks, and some of the blocks don't need a dollar figure right now. But what would help though, is if there are a few that we wanna do, like, I think we're pretty close to getting comfortable on water. You know, if there are any other, and also, you know, if we don't have a commitment from this commission right now that we're gonna do the AC in the jail and the AC in the historic courthouse. If we move forward on those, that automatically starts to help that committee focus down on, okay, we're not talking about 24, we're talking about, you know, considerably less than that. And they can come help, you know, suggest, well, okay, these are the blocks you've given us, these are projects we're starting to look at, help us refine this. It's not gonna be an all back to you at one time. I think it's gonna be an ongoing back and forth as you refine, but ultimately, we all need to decide how big the blocks are. But I don't think we can do all that in one night. And I think that it would be helpful if we knew, yes, you know, we've talked about it, there's never been a vote in this commission that yes, we're ready to say we'll put up to 12.5 million in water and 4.4 million in these AC projects. So, you know, that's an action we can take tonight, if we've got the votes to do it, and send that back to that committee again, so because they do need to start getting those blocks back to you if we're gonna get matching funds in this fiscal year coming up, it starts in June. And that won't just be, I used the example of the monies for the meat packing, but a lot of these things, including the water, you know, we're gonna have to start applying for grants. The state doesn't have, the state doesn't really have, they're not open yet on the other. But from what Representative Alexander told us in our last committee meeting, you know, all that's gonna come together here pretty quick, and we're gonna need to be ready to apply in those areas. That doesn't mean we've made a final decision, but I guess you talk a lot about process, and you're right. We need to get this process rolling and in place, so that when the time comes to make the decisions, they can happen a little faster than we might normally do.
Commissioner Malone?
I was actually gonna ask the chair a question. Is the chair open and receptive to a motion to suspend the rules such that we can begin to start setting some framework and rough outlines for these dollars?
Yes, so is that your motion?
If the chair is willing, I will make a motion that we suspend the rules so we can take action and begin to set some framework for these dollars.
Second.
No second by Commissioner Hatfield to suspend the rule. Suspending the rule require a 2/3 majority. Commissioner Jones?
I have just a point of question about this. So if we vote on something tonight, we don't have a resolution in front of us. So how do we know? I mean, if we just all verbally agree on what they say, something, and that's
Well, not all the time do we have a resolution. Commissioner Tester, the chairman of the Rules Committee, do you want to weigh in on that a bit?
I was just gonna say that, our rules do say that everything's supposed to be, that action is, hold on, I'll read it to you. Rule 8A, the first sentence says, all business of the board shall be reduced to writing in the form of a resolution in advance of the meeting, and then it goes on to talk about, we get it 5 days before and all that. So I think that's what we need to think about in terms of suspending the rules. And if we do take votes, we need to make sure that we get it recorded well for the minutes and so forth.
don't know that we will be able to move forward with anything with that rule in place.
But that's the purpose of suspended rules, Mr. Chairman.
I agree, but if we go down, if we suspend the rule, are we reducing the motion to a resolution today to consider? You know what I'm saying? And I think Commissioner Jones brought that point up.
But
Yes, Commissioner Woodward.
I think if the motion is to suspend the rules and take something up, then we take it up as a motion, rather than a resolution, and it would be important for the clerk to get the motion down, but that would be the action in the commission. I think that's the whole purpose of this motion, to suspend the rules.
I agree with that. I just feel like that there's no way that you can have a resolution prepared for every situation without suspending the rule of some kind.
Yes, sir. I agree. I understand, I'm sorry.
As Commissioner Huffine, we had a motion in a second, correct? Oh, suspending the rule, okay.
Do
Commissioner-
we need a resolution, and is this, and I probably, Allison, question you from a, quote, business, all we're really doing is providing direction to the board and feedback to the board. We're not taking any firm action tonight that's long-term or impactful. All we're doing is simply from a workshop perspective, providing some guidance. And I guess my question is that within the definition of business?
This specific issue is we're just suspending the rule to consider that.
Yeah.
Something of that nature right now. So,
Mr. Chairman, I think
well,
if we could have clarification from Commissioner Malone on his motion to suspend the rules, was it as to notice? Because I think Commissioner Wheeler is making a point that if you want a second motion to suspend the rules as to Rule 8A, which is the requirement of writing in advance, you can do that. But I think originally it was to suspend the rules as to the notice. Is that correct, Commissioner Malone?
Well, correct to the notice and I guess to the resolution in a sense, and, there's no, I don't know how this body would ever imagine every potential scenario such that we reduce it in writing 5 days ahead of time. Things come up. My intent tonight is just to provide, and I may not be the one to make the motion, but if we do suspend the rules, my intent is such that we could actually take action and provide some meaningful framework for this board as they begin helping this body to consider how to spend these dollars, how to invest these dollars in our county. So I think my next motion, if I were to make it after this, is just that we allocate $12.5 million for water and $4.5 million for HVAC projects at both the historic courthouse and the jail. And I think, at least in terms of the beginning and a start, that's what I'm imagining tonight in terms of beginning to provide some framework, some guide rails, if you will, for this board.
Mr. Chairman?
yes, Ms. Ruiz.
Thank you. I think it helps to clarify Commissioner Malone's motion is to suspend the rules, and he can amend it to include the requirement that this must be reduced to writing for the purpose of allocating funding of 12.5 in water projects and 4.5 million in HVAC. And, that general rule is with respect to resolutions being requested for the regularly scheduled meetings. You're at a special called meeting with action, and it's a duly noticed meeting, and you are, under the law, allowed to take action. And I don't think that your rules of procedure should hamstring you from taking that action. I think that they need to be used to further what you're trying to do. So I think there has to be some give and take there. If I restated Commissioner Malone's motion well enough for him to be able to get that second, I think then you have it in front of the commission. If it wants to take that action, it would be suspending the rules on the notice, because
the agenda came out today, but it is a duly noticed meeting. There's sufficient notice under Tennessee law to discuss the priorities of spending. And then Rule 8A is a local requirement to reduce business to writing, and then the funding that Commissioner Malone set out. And I'd be happy to work with the clerk to make sure that that's memorialized in your minutes, if that's the motion.
Indeed it is, thank you.
I want to ask
The second,
a question.
hold on. Do you accept, I'll second. Okay, Commissioner Williams?
I just wanted to know if in the process of the next few months, we want to adjust the figures of the contribution. If, say, in looking at the 12 million, you might need to take it down to 10 and a half. What, are we locked into that figure with this motion?
That's certainly not my intent, but it is my intent to say, hey, we're gonna spend potentially up to half of this money on water. If we get grants and other things that bring that number down, that's great. But again, I'm trying to provide some framework to this board so that they have something to work with.
Commissioner Huffine?
I think what we need to do tonight is be very cautious in our vernacular, that we are suggesting an allocation or something to Commissioner Williams. I don't think we're even in a position to lock down, or is that anyone's intent? We can make a suggestion, and that's all it is at this point. Again, it's a fluid process, so let's just be cautious in our vernacular as we move forward with this.
Commissioner Kester?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say, I think part of the issue that we're running into right at this moment is this whole thing is kind of going around our commission process, the way that it's set up already. That's what that rule is about everything going through the committee structure. And we're talking about this committee that's been meeting or met twice, but I don't know how that committee really formed, and I've not seen minutes yet, and I don't know who the chairman is, and so forth and so on. And I don't know if the idea is for things to come from that group as an idea to then one of our standing committees and then to the commission, or what? And we're kind of like, chasing our tail around or something here. So I'm not sure the way forward here, but I'm trying to identify the problem that we're sitting here going around and around about.
Commissioner Jones?
Thank you. And when you say be careful about the vernacular, that's what made me think I would like to see it in writing. And I am absolutely wanting to support moving the water project set point through as quickly as possible, which is why I suggested, bring it to the August commission meeting. Sounds like that would be timely enough to set you up for success in the fall of funding. Not sure about how to bring the historic courthouse and jail AC projects through commission, but I'm open to that and would love to see that stuff on the August agenda.
Commissioner Wheeler?
I don't know that we'll be ready to fund those. We're not really talking about funding anything here. We're talking about just giving this committee some parameters. I think it would be a really bad idea to say that this committee is going to then go through a 5-member standing committee to decide whether they agree with this task force work before it even comes to commission as a recommendation. I don't favor that. Part of the reason for that, and only part, is this need for speed here, which I'm sure a member of the committee is an elected official asked, does the commission understand we have deadlines? And I was like, the commission definitely understands we have deadlines. They were concerned about the committee. But I just think we want to be careful about bogging ourselves down later on in this process. But for right now, I don't think we're ready. If we come with anything to the August commission meeting, it would probably be the water task force coming forward and saying, hey, if y'all are going to use this, $12.5 million, we're ready for $75,000 that we need for a contract with one of these engineers. saying we want 14 million, you know, that's probably jumping the gun, because the committee's gonna get your guidance and work and come back with recommendations, but, you know, we're not setting aside 14 million here and saying, it's yours, go spend it, we're not doing that. And I don't think we'll be ready to do that, I don't think we can do that all. Because, well, if for no other reason, man, everybody's been saying, well, we don't wanna go too fast because we may get matching monies. Well, that's true, so we're sure not gonna be coming back in August saying we're ready to allocate 14 million. It'll be piecemeal.
Commissioner Davenport?
I know I tend to oversimplify things, but this commission's already approved roughly $8 million of water projects to be done. We just have not approved the funding mechanism, which that's what we're working on. So I would think the budget committee could take action for next month to say we could use up to $8 million, and we could vote on that next commission. I mean, I don't see, we still haven't spent anything. We're just saying that $8 million is locked into the projects that we've already approved.
You may knock yourself out of the matching money doing that. Because they may say, we'll match what you've already allocated. They won't do projects, so you could come out in October with rules from the state that say, we'll match projects, but only new projects. If you've already allocated money to them, you can't do that.
Okay, that may be true, because again, I oversimplified, because from what I was told, or the way I understood things, was if we spent this money on water projects, then therefore we may be eligible for a match.
But we don't know what the rules on that are.
That's true. So we can't move forward with any money anyway, no matter what we bring.
All right, let's say you move forward with 75,000 in, engineering, to stay ahead of everybody else. And let's say those rules come out and they say, we will match, but we won't match any money you've already spent. Well, we've spent 75 that we're not gonna get matched, but we stayed ahead of everybody else because we did that. We have engineers, and everybody else is ready to hire their engineers and they can't get them.
But we moved forward with almost $8 million worth of stuff, so it still could be put in the budget's hands with the work that we've already done. And said, you know, part of that project is buying equipment and getting started. So you just approved $75,000 or $100,000 in budget, which is part of that project. And move on. Again, utilizing the work that's already been done in the task force, to the committee, who went to Public Works, and then come to commission.
That's already done. But as you said, the first thing you said was we haven't decided where that money's coming from. So again, tonight, all we're really talking about is the 24 million and how it gets, starts to get divided up. So it's really kind of almost separate from that as far as it's.
It is, I do see that that is two different things. Tonight, the message that we send to, that task force, is different than the funding for these projects. Absolutely.
Commissioner Ford, do you have a question?
As far as priorities, I think this commission pretty well decided what priorities are gonna be. It's water, number one, and number two, talk about the $4.4 million, that's $17 million anyway, too, the way my little brain figures. And you may not be allocating the money now, but you allocate the money. And I think that we got plenty of time, just like the mayor said, it's something we don't have to do tonight. Remember, and another thing is we're not following the procedure, I don't think. And if we're gonna have a rule, if we're not gonna follow them, why do we have it? And we've talked about it for almost 2 hours, and I think everybody's got the same priority. I just don't think we ought to be allocating any money, because we don't have a resolution for it, do we?
Commissioner Jones, I don't think we're allocating the the money. Is that right, Commissioner Blount? Can you
Yeah,
clarify this?
if I may, I think there is certainly confusion about my intent. And I would ask any one of the commissioners, what are you gonna do with this board that has been established, and to Commissioner Tester's point, no, this commission didn't establish that board, but a board has been established to help identify projects for these monies. What is this commission gonna do when they come back and say, well, we've decided to spend 25 million on agriculture or public health or whatever, and we go, no, wait a minute, we meant to spend half of this money on water. Well, they didn't know you meant to spend half of this money on water because we haven't communicated that to them. All I imagined from us tonight via this special called meeting and workshop is we communicate to them a rough outline of what we imagine to prioritize these dollars for. We're not spending the money, we're not allocating the money, we're just saying to this board that is established, don't come back with 25 million in agriculture or 25 million in public health. We're gonna spend roughly half of this money on water. And oh, by the way, we've got 4.5, 4.4, or 4.5 million in HVAC projects that we're gonna have to do. Don't allocate those dollars. We're just beginning to put parameters around this money for them so they know how much they do have that they can go out into the community and ask for input about. There's no reason to go out and ask the community for input about 25 million. Because we're gonna spend half of it perhaps on water. We're gonna spend nearly 4.5 million on HVAC projects. So I fear that we are only gonna confuse them and aggravate them really if we don't give them some outline and guidelines. It's almost not fair to them to provide an outline. That's all I imagine. We're not committing to spend half of it on water. We're just putting parameters and guidelines around it so it doesn't otherwise get committed or spent. I hope that cleared it up a little.
I was just gonna call the question. This
I'm
is
not ready
such
for
a-
questions.
I recognize Commissioner Ford. Go ahead, Commissioner Ford, then we're gonna vote.
I'm not convinced, I don't understand what you're saying, Commissioner Ronald. But any way you cut it, it's still $17 million you got allocated if you decide you're gonna spend $12.5 million on water and 4.4 on, the HVAC system. That's still $17 million. I'm just saying, we need to prioritize is one thing, and putting a price tag to it is another. It's like he said, if he gets, if we allocate $12 million, and we get 12 million as matches done, that's great. But if we don't do that tonight, and it comes along and we can maybe put 14 million in it, and get that much more, well, that'd be good. I'm just saying, I'm not saying anything, I'm saying it's not that hard. Why can't we just prioritize the two projects tonight, and then put the rest of it on the table, and discuss it next meeting?
I agree. I think that's what my motion was. We are in agreement.
Call for the question.
Question's been called. Madam Clerk, switch us to the voting screen, please.
What are we voting on here?
We are voting, we are first voting. Have we already voted to suspend the rule and all of this in here?
All wrapped into one motion.
Okay, all right, because usually we vote twice on that. One to suspend the rule and the other is.
Well, you have to have a 2/3 on suspending the rule.
We gotta vote on that first.
Well, that's what everybody laughed at. It said,
I
no, they
think
don't
it
have to.
stays, it's a very good question, Commissioner Tester. Would that go with the number, or the number of the full body on suspending the rule?
Suspending the rules is 2/3.
2/3 of the full body,
Yes.
or 2/3 of the president?
2/3 of the full body.
2/3 of the full body. So to clarify that, it would be 10.
And we are voting on this all together because it doesn't, I mean, we gotta have 10 to
consider it, so we might as well.
You gotta have 10 for the, yeah, so we're voting it all together. All right.
You mean we're
Wait,
also
wait,
voting
wait.
on priorities and the suspension?
That's the vote.
I thought the motion was just to suspend the rules.
No, as I think.
Well, let's go ahead and vote on suspending the rule. I'll clarify that up. Let's go ahead and vote on suspending the rule first, and we'll come back to motion. Madam Clerk, if you'll switch to the voting screen of the suspended rule, we can cast your vote and lock it in. Madam Clerk, if you announce the vote, 7 yes, 6 no, and suspending the rule has failed, 2 absent. Right. Any further discussion or consideration? We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion made to adjourn, we have a second?
Second.
Second to adjourn. All in favor of adjourn, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. We're adjourned.